Good morning. I turned the heat on this morning. Air conditioning's still on up here, though. I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. Looks like there's lots of folks that still have their extended family here, or the kids back from college or whatnot. My family celebrated Thanksgiving on Friday night because my brother and sister were with their in-laws. And so Thursday, I was kind of wondering what I was going to do. I had Mass in the morning, and then I was just going to sit around, and I thought, I don't know, maybe I'll order Chinese food for dinner if they're open, or maybe I'll go to Waffle House. And then I thought to myself, gosh, that's just really sad. I don't want to do that. So I called my mom and I said, hey, because my other brother was coming in on Thursday. I said, what are you guys doing for dinner tonight? She said, we got 2 steaks that we're going to cook and split them up between the 3 of us. You can come over and we'll try and figure out something else to eat. I said, okay, well, I think Kroger's open on Thanksgiving. So I stopped at one of the really janky Kroger's on 92, heading over to Woodstock. And they had, they were open, but it was just a weird place. I shop at the super bougie Publix there, so I'm spoiled. Anyway, I found these 2 pieces of meat that said they were steak, and I bought them and took them to my parents' house, and we cooked them, and it was a penitential steak. Let's just put it that way. But in doing that, we decided we were going to get out my dad's Big Green Egg. We gave it to him about 10 years ago. They moved, back around Easter, and I haven't used it there at the new house yet. So I said, well, let's use the Big Green Egg. And my mom said, well, your dad doesn't want to use it because he thinks that with the smoke and everything, it's going to catch the porch on fire under the cover. And my brother and I were like, no, it won't. It's fine. And so my dad said, oh, okay, well, then we can use it. My mom was thrilled at that she wouldn't, that he wouldn't listen to her that it wouldn't catch fire, but his son said it, and so it must be true. So anyway, we fire up the Big Green Egg, get the charcoal. My dad goes and gets the box out of the garage. It's got all the stuff in it. And we're setting the thing up, and I'm thinking to myself, gosh, I'm so glad that I switched to a pellet grill. I used to be one of these pretentious Big Green Egg guys, too. It's just so much easier to press a button and to dial a knob to 325 and then just walk away, and the pellets do all the work. Anyway, we get the grill going, and we decide that for the next day we're going to use it as well because my mom had 2 turkeys. I asked her how she was going to cook 2 turkeys when she only has 1 oven, and she said, well, I'm going to cook the first one, then I'm just going to, cover it in foil and let it sit while the other one cooks. And I'm thinking to myself, gosh, turkey's already bad enough as it is, but sitting out for 4 extra hours, just getting cold and soggy, I can't imagine that that's going to be any better. So I said, why don't we use the Big Green Egg to do one of the turkeys? So, okay, great. So my brother, early in the morning, gets up and prepares the turkey, does the method where you cut its backbone out and flip it open like a book and coat it in butter and herbs and all sorts of good stuff. And we get the grill ready, and if you've used a Big Green Egg, or you got to dial the valves at the bottom and the top to get it just right to get the temperature. Finally, after an hour and a half, I get it to 325 where I want it. We put the bird on, I put the thermometer probe in, everything's going great. It's supposed to take 2 hours and 15 minutes. I waited because my mom put hers in the oven. It was going to take 4.5 hours. My mom's finished first, and mine's sitting there hovering at 150 degrees. And I'm like, So I take another thermometer, and I'm probing different parts of it, and it's reading 165, 175, 180. And I'm like, well, okay, this thing's got to be done. I go over, I take my instant read thermometer back to where the probe is, and I'm checking it. Maybe the probe's bad. Nope, 155, 145. And I'm thinking, what do I do? I'm just standing here. There's nothing I can do. I open the vents all the way on the Big Green Egg, trying to get it up, higher temperature. It maybe got up to 350. I don't know what was going wrong. And so finally, the other turkey's all ready to go. It's getting carved. I say, I'm going to pull this thing because I know there's some meat in it that's done. And so we start carving and cutting, and I'm like, that's definitely done. That's definitely done. That might be done, but I'll let people take their chances. That's definitely not done. Put that on the tray. Put it back in the oven. Nobody died. Everybody was fine. One of my brothers did say that as you got closer to the bone, it was a little questionable. But the moral of that story is I was poorly prepared to make this turkey. So we're in this time of Advent, which is about preparation. And preparation isn't about just waiting, right? We're not just waiting for something to happen passively, right? Just like I couldn't stand there and just wait for this bird to finish cooking, to get to temperature. Rather, it's about actively preparing ourselves in anticipation of Christ's coming. Now, in Advent, we talk about the coming of Christ at Easter, coming of Christ at Christmas, but of course, we also talk about his second coming at the end of time. And so, this gospel reading that we have, while it seems a little doom and gloom for Advent, we'd rather hear about, the angels and the shepherds and the baby Jesus. We've got this kind of doom and gloom gospel, Jesus saying that there will be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars, and all on earth, all nations will be in dismay. People will die of fright. And he says, beware that your hearts do not become drowsy from carousing and drunkenness and the anxieties of daily life. Do not become drowsy. Do not give up. Do not stop preparing. Do not stop making sure that you're doing everything that you can to live a life of grace, to do the will of God, to be in union with God. And so Advent is this time where we focus more so than preparing for Christmas, more so than preparing for the coming of Christ, because he's already done that. He was already born in history. He was already here. He already did the thing that he had to do. He already ascended to heaven. Now it's about preparing for when he comes back, preparing for when Christ returns. And also, kind of in a middle way, preparing for Christ's coming that happens each day in the Eucharist. Christ desires to come to be with us, to dwell in us. He dwells in us through the sacraments. And so we ask him to help us to make ourselves more worthy of his presence. Not just by saying, hey, God, will you make me more worthy of your presence, but rather, help me to know what I need to do and how to do it. And so Advent isn't just this time of kind of like, all right, well, let's make sure that everything's arranged and everything needs to be where it needs to be, but rather, what do I need to do in my own life, in my own heart? What do I need to make sure is changed or is prepared? You hear us preach a lot about confession and its importance, and this Advent we're going to focus not just on confession, but really on preparing and examining your conscience to make a good confession, right? So often people come to confession and they're not really prepared, and they're like, anger, envy, lust, greed. Like, okay, well, those are like categories of sin. We got to actually name the sin. And sometimes people are embarrassed to name the sin, and that's okay. Just spit it out. Not going to scare the priest. Hurt it all. Like a doctor. And so we prepare ourselves for confession by asking God first in prayer, come and help me. Come and help me to be aware of what I've done, what I've failed to do. In fact, a really good way to do that is a daily examination of conscience. At the end of each day, as we're preparing for bed, to think, okay, God, help me to reflect on my day. What have I done to do your will? What have I not done? What did I do that I shouldn't have done? What did I not do that I ought to have done? And to kind of go through that each day, and it helps us as we go forward to the next day. We say, okay, I need to do better in this area. I need to strive for this. But sometimes, as we're doing that, as we're examining our conscience daily, maybe our memory gets jogged, and we think, oh yeah, you know what? That really is something that I need to take to God in confession. Not just something that I say, okay, well, I'm sorry, and God will forgive me. The sacraments were given to us for a reason. Jesus instituted the 7 sacraments for us to use them. They're the ordinary means of how we receive grace, forgiveness of sins. And so Jesus gives us the sacrament of confession. And another name for confession is reconciliation. It's in the prayer of absolution that God the Father reconciles the world to himself. He desires for all of us to be reconciled to him. He desires for all of us to be reunited with him. On the day of our baptisms, we were washed clean of original and all actual sin. But we're not perfect. We have concupiscence, which means the tendency to sin. And so we look and we say, yeah, well, I know I shouldn't do this thing, but I'm going to do it. I know I shouldn't rob that bank, but I'm going to rob it. And a lot of people, a little side note, a lot of people think, well, I don't need to go to confession. It's not like I robbed a bank or killed anybody, so what do I need to go to confession for? Well, a good, important way that we can prepare ourselves for confession, maybe even see, do I need to go to confession, is to do a good examination of conscience. So in the back of the church, in the corner there outside the confessional/chapel door, we have on the wall these examination of conscience pamphlets. There's also these others. I think they disappeared. They're on a little flip pad. Maybe Father Michael will bring them out if he's listening. He found them on some like trad mom Etsy website and got them. They're both basically the same. Do you take offense to that, Nicole? I'll add that to my next confession. I made fun of the trad wives selling stuff on Etsy. Both of them have the same information. They go through the Ten Commandments. They go through the Beatitudes. They list the deadly sins. They list the virtues. They list all of the different things that help us to prepare. The nice thing about this one is it's got this big blank space where you can actually write stuff down, which is perfectly fine. Take it, write it down. I used to do that kind of in college. I would write down my examination of conscience, and then when I was done with confession, I'd go and shred it into like 1,000 bajillion pieces and like sprinkle it in trash all over different areas so nobody could like piece it back together. But if you spend time in prayer and you really kind of sit down and you go through, right, did I deny or doubt God's existence? Well, I don't think I did that outright. Well, if you didn't do it, you don't need to say anything about it. Don't say, well, did I... some people will do that. They'll come in with a list and they'll go through and they're like, no, I didn't do that. But did I deny or doubt God's existence? Did I put something else ahead of God? Did I find something more important than God? Was I more concerned with watching 8 times of overtime to see Georgia Tech? Gosh, those poor guys. Did I deny that I was Catholic? Was I, at a restaurant, we were going to say the blessing, and I didn't do the sign of the cross because I didn't want people to see me and be like, oh, he's a weird Catholic. Just little things that can kind of, maybe we don't think of in the moment, but if you spend some time really prayerfully asking God to open your heart, to go through that examination of conscience, to say, God, what have I failed to do? What have I missed? What have I missed? I remember one time, like 7 or 8 years ago, when I was in Dalton, I went to confession with this priest in Chattanooga regularly, and I remember I was like, I just remembered something that happened like 10 years ago that I never confessed, that I really should have. And I did, and it just, this great like weight and burden was lifted off of my shoulders, because I was carrying this thing, and I didn't realize it was a sin. I was like, you know what, I'd actually probably, I should confess that. And that happens. I experience it all the time in confession. People will come in and they'll say, like, I don't know if I've ever confessed this before. I'm embarrassed. Something I did when I was a kid, or something, in my adolescence. And, I just, Father, I gotta assure you, it was a long time ago. That's okay. It's okay. Just say it. Just bring it to God. Allow Him to apply His mercy to your life. He wants to give you peace. He wants to give you pardon. He wants to make you holy. He wants to forgive you. He wants you to be more perfectly united to Him. So if we take that and we talk about kind of the active part of preparation, anticipation for Christ's coming, we think, okay, the things that I got to do. But also it's the thing that God does. It's where we kind of get out of our own way. It's where we sort of just allow God to point things out for us, to show us, to say, this is what you need to do. This is the direction you need to go. This is the thing you need to let go of. This is the thing you need to strive to do better. And then when our eyes are open, it can be life-changing. It can be life-changing. It's not going to be some huge event. It's not going to be necessarily St. Paul getting knocked off the horse and the heavens opening and encountering Christ. But sometimes just little things, they can, abruptly kind of jar us from our slumber, from our drowsiness. Again, I go back to this line in the gospel: beware that your hearts do not become drowsy in the carousing and drunkenness and the anxieties of daily life. The anxieties of daily life. Gosh, there's so much stuff to worry about, right? We got to get ready for Christmas. We got to decorate. We got to do all this stuff. We got to figure out what food to have. We got to buy the presents. We got to figure out how to pay for the presents. We got to make sure we got all the stuff. We got to make sure everything is good because this world is just so chaotic and there's so much stuff and everybody's watching me. And we get caught up with the anxieties of daily life and we fail to look forward to eternal life. We fail to be anxious for heaven. And so let us not get caught in the anxieties of daily life. Let us not get caught in the busyness and craziness of the world. Let us recognize that these 4 weeks, they're a gift to us where we can slow down. I know the world says speed up, right? I know that the world's already got all the Christmas decorations up and all the stuff and the music's there. On Friday, my dad tried to turn on Christmas music, which, as you know, I'm an Advent Grinch and no Christmas music until Christmas. And I just had this violent reaction that I had to repent for very quickly afterwards. And I was just surprised because my dad doesn't do Christmas music. He listens to classic rock. That's the only music that he has ever listened to for as long as I've been alive. Probably for as long as he's been alive, although I guess it wasn't classic when he first started listening to it. But the idea that oh yeah, well we got to do all the stuff that the world does. No, let's be different. Let's say, hey world, that's great, but you know what? Christmas is actually ours, right? We're the ones, the Christians. We're the ones that do Christmas. So let's make sure we do it well. Christmas starts on Christmas. We prepare ourselves throughout these 4 weeks. Perhaps we're impatient and we want it. I want it to be Christmas now. I want to get my presents. I want instant gratification. I want to see all the stuff. I want to hear the stuff. But to really it's almost like the church forces us, slow down. Pump the brakes. And then examine your own life. What do I need to do? What do I need to change? How do I need to prepare? If it's been a long time since you've been to confession, Advent is a perfect time to go. That doesn't mean you should only go to confession during Advent or Lent. You go to confession as needed. The church tells us that we should confess all of our sins in kind and number, right? Or all of our mortal sins. Mortal sin is something that's grave matter, that we have full knowledge of and that we deliberately consent to do. We should prepare ourselves, though. If it's been a long time since you've made a good confession, where you didn't just come in kind of yeah, well, here's the thing that's bothering me the most, or here's some of the things. But a really good confession. Take an examination of conscience with you. I would be thrilled if there are no more left in that little holder after Mass, and I had to go find out where the rest of them are and refill them. Take an examination of conscience. Spend some time this week just in quiet prayer. Whether you come here to the church and you sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament, whether you find a quiet space at home, whether you have to lock yourself in the bathroom to get away from your kids to have 3 minutes of peace. Probably not quiet because they're going to be banging on the door. But just take some time, go through, ask God, help to show me the things that you need me to know. Help me to see what I'm currently not willing to see. Help me to know how I can grow in holiness and how I can do better. And if we all do that, if we all can enter into this Advent time recognizing the need to prepare ourselves well, examining our consciences and asking God to help us to be better, helping us to be more holy, helping us to be more like Him, then when Christmas comes, I promise you, it will be the best celebration of Christmas that you've ever had.